Now we are going to start part 2 of pregnancy-induced hypertension. So in this part 2, first we'll start with the risk factors. So what are the risk factors for the HELP syndrome? The risk factors are, the first one is if previously there is history of preeclampsia. So already there is history of preeclampsia or past history of chronic hypertension, okay, or hypertension, family history of hypertension and chronic kidney disease. So all this, or if already a patient is having preeclampsia previously, already there is a history of hypertension, or already there is a history of hypertension in their family, or already they are having chronic disease. So in this all cases, this is a risk factor. And the other risk factor is primigravida, that is the first time the female is pregnant, that is primigravida. And new paternity, like someone again, even though it is multigravida, but if a new paternity, then it is a risk factor. And diabetes is a risk factor, like placentomegaly. Because of diabetes there is placentomegaly. Whenever there is placentomegaly, only low blood comes in the intervillar space, okay, placentomegaly syndrome, like leading to APLA, metabolic X syndrome. So all these syndromes like placentomegaly, APLA, metabolic X syndromes, these are the risk factors. And the other risk factors are twin pregnancy, molar pregnancy, Rh negative incompatibility pregnancy, all this. In this all cases also there is placentomegaly. So whenever there is placentomegaly, there's a risk factor in this pregnancy. And remember that the protective factor, shockingly the protective factor is smoking. Smoking is protective factor in the case of this HELP syndrome, that is sorry, not HELP syndrome, that is pregnancy induced hypertension. So now coming to prevention. So in prevention you take only those who have identifiable risk factors. So in prevention we only give to those who are having identifiable risk factors, like aspirin. So for prevention, give aspirin, that is 50 to 150 milligrams per day. So give aspirin 15 to 150 milligrams per day. It should be started from 12 weeks of gestation, that is not more than 16 weeks, and it should be continued throughout the pregnancy. So start the giving aspirin from 12 weeks and continue throughout the pregnancy. And remember, it should be not given more than 16 weeks. Okay. So other measures, what they need to do to reduce this hypertension is exercise. They should do exercise, they should give heparin plus aspirin together, and there should be calcium supplementation, okay. And calcium supplementation should be given only if the patient calcium level is low. If the patient is having low calcium, so now let us see what are the measures which we not to give for the they don't have any benefit in the case of hypertension, like in the PIH, that is pregnancy induced hypertension, there is no use of bed rest. Don't give bed rest, no need of bed rest, no need of salt restriction. Even though if we give, they are not so antioxidants, fish oil, and even heparin alone. So if you give heparin alone also, there is no use, because they are not they are not having any effect in PIH. Now coming to investigations. What are the investigations to predict? So investigations to predict PIH. So what are those? There is a uterine artery Doppler. Uterine artery Doppler is the most common method, okay. Uterine artery Doppler is the most common, and the other one is giant roll over test. Giant roll over test, okay. Giant roll over test is when the patient is turned from left lateral position to supine position. If the BP raises greater than 20 milligrams of mercury, then it predicts the development of PIH in future. So if your pregnant female is on left side and now you say her to move on supine position, and if her BP is raising than greater than 20 milligrams of mercury, then it predicts there is a development of PIH in future. And this test is but outdated. This test is outdated now, okay. So that is the giant rollover test, and next uterine artery Doppler is the most common. So what are the recent predictors? The recent predictors, now let us see what are the recent predictors. Okay. So the recent predictors are increase in PIH. Increase in PIH predicts anti-angiogenic factors, that is increase in SFLT1 and increase S endoglin and vasoconstrictors, increase thromboxane A2, decrease prostacyclin, and decrease in PIH predicts angiogenic factors VEGF, placental growth factor, and the vasodilator is nitric oxide. Okay, so now coming to pathogenesis of preeclampsia or PIH. So coming to pathogenesis, actually as we said, this is the villus, and this is the tertiary villi, and this is the intervillar space. From the tertiary villi, the fetus blood will be coming. From the intervillar space, mother blood will be coming, but they'll never meet, right? So normally spiral arteries open in the intervillar space. Cytotrophoblast extravillar spaces replaces the lining of spinal artery, and trophoblastic invasion takes place, which helps in angiogenesis. So it increases the transverse diameter of arteries, so they are converted from high resistance vessel to the low resistance vessels. But in the case of PIH, what happens is the trophoblastic invasion is incomplete. So because of this, the vascular remodeling is incomplete, and that is leading to decrease in angiogenic factors and also increase in anti-angiogenic factors. So in PIH, this is the problem. So because of this, decrease in angiogenic factors like VEGF, placental growth factor, vasodilators, nitric oxide, all those are decreasing. Whereas increase in anti-angiogenic factors means SVLT1 is increasing, S endogelin is increasing, vasoconstriction is increasing, thromboxane A2 is increasing, prostacyclin is increasing. So these are all the problems. What is the resistance in vessels? Still the resistance in the vessels is high. Resistance in the vessels is remaining high. Due to this, there is vasoconstriction, and the volume of blood which is coming to the intervillar space decreases. So volume of blood coming to intervillar space decreases, and that is leading to placental ischemia. And because of placental ischemia, the placenta is small and pale, and even the inflammatory mediators are released, and they make the endothelium leak. So because of endothelium leak, what happens is the concentration fluid in the third space increases, leading to edema, and there is hemoconcentration. There is a diuretics, that's why they are contraindicated, because there is hemoconcentration, and that is leading to thrombosis in blood vessels, and finally multi-organ damage. So that is leading to multi-organ failure. So what are the theories for preeclampsia? The last one, the theories for preeclampsia are altered vascular remodeling theory, and the second one is genetic theory, and the third one is altered immune response to paternal gene. Okay, so in preeclampsia, the hemoconcentration is less blood goes to the brain of the mother, kidney of the mother, and also fetal blood flow is dropped. So when the brain of the mother gets less blood flow, that will lead to cerebral hypoxia, that is leading to convulsions. Less kidney to the mother, low blood flow leading to low renal blood flow, low GFR, increased serum urine creatine levels, uric acid. In the case of low fetal blood flow, it is leading to IUGR, that is leading to decreased RBF in fetus, finally leading to oliguria, oligohydroamnios. So what is the most common organ involved in PIH? That is very important, that is the kidney. So most common organ involved in PIH is kidney. And the most characteristic histopathological finding is glomeruloendotheliosis. And next coming to no shift, there is no shift from TH1 to TH2 in the case of PIH, that is pregnancy induced hypertension. So next we'll start with the third part.